Welcome to episode 18 of Mother Rugby, the only podcast dedicated to Irish women's rugby. I'm Ailbhe O'Nolan.
And I'm Cian O'Nolan.
So it's all over. England are the world champions, a home World Cup for the Red Roses. The scriptwriters World Cup, perhaps, in which an incredible Canadian side almost went all the way, but they just couldn't beat the best in the world. So joining us to chat about the games today is Chloe Pearse, who hasn't won anything since the last episode, so the intro is going to be brief. Sorry, Chloe.
And look, I'm
She
just
won a
going to
game.
say, yeah, we won
She
on
did win a
Saturday, and I did score a try.
You scored a try, yeah.
And it was unbelievable, and I'm calling it now. It's try of the season.
Early contender for try of the season.
Early contender for try of the season. I'm
We
calling
need to
it
see
now.
the footage.
The BlackRock camera is useless, and the pole is in the way and everything, but just take my word for it.
Yeah, look, we know you, Chloe, setting standards for everyone else now for the rest
Oh,
of the season. Fair
God.
play.
I'll have to jump off this if you're going to be filling our head now with...
Here, listen, you now. You leave that Belvo coat at home next time I see
I've
you.
no Belvo. I didn't have any code. I'd only the pants on, girl.
And as you heard and saw, it's Fiona Hayes as well. Incredible coach, but somebody who's played for Ireland, Munster and UL Bows. Coached 2 out of 3 of those so far. Ireland up next, I hope. And the OG Munster prop and Limerick's finest. Welcome.
Thank you, lads. Thanks for having me.
Now I'm going off if she's going to be, if that's...
I'm not sure if that Ireland job, I'll never guess that now. But look, we'll live in hope.
Listen, we'll riot if you don't. It has to happen at some point. So we're discussing the final day of the Rugby World Cup. 2 games. It was the bronze final followed by the big game of England versus Canada. So like I said, kind of a script writers World Cup. There was no major upsets throughout the competition, save a few, but nothing in particular that would have stood out. England expected to win. England went on and won. The top 4 teams in the world were in the semi-finals. I think, Fiona, England have kind of proven a point that investment equals results. If you look at their PWR competition, they have 300 or so, maybe more, elite level players across the competition, 15 million invested annually. A decade of that since they won the 2014 World Cup has seen them get to 2 World Cup finals and then win it on their 3rd World Cup final. It's kind of proven to the unions, back the women and you'll see results.
Absolutely. And, I've said this a few times in the last couple of weeks. I don't really ever cheer for England to win anything in my life. I think we'll all say we're all the same. But yes, a lot of people were going for Canada, but I was actually going for England on Saturday solely because of that reason. I think it's this side of the world. It should make other unions stand up and take a look at what they're doing with their homegrown league. You would hope the likes of Scotland, Wales that are in trouble at the minute with their unions, that they can see that if you water it, that it will actually grow, and it's grown into what a product it's growing into. I was saying to someone earlier that, I'd very rarely have a pint of Asahi, and I had one at the World Cup, and sure, I came home and I was in Dublin and it was the first pint I ordered when I was out. So, the sponsorship is working as well. So they were a big brand there, and it was the first pint I went to when I got back to Ireland. So it's just something that you've seen flourish, I suppose. And to even just say about the league as well, their league, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was 8 or 9, but it was either 8 or 9 of the Canadians actually play in the Premiership. Probably 8 now, but 9. Sophie Goody doesn't play, I think, anymore, but maybe 9 if you included her. So it's just an unbelievable league, what they have done, the contracts, how they've been able to field 2 teams throughout the World Cup. Yes, towards the end they stuck with the similar kind of squad, but they would have had the ability to beat most teams with what we would consider their second team. And it just shows the investment, the growth of the game. And what really impressed me is everybody's personalities being on show, and we got to see a lot of that. Now, you mightn't like them all, but you got to see them, and that's what's been unbelievable about this tournament, that it's been looked at something special, not based off what the men's has, that's what we've all done for the women's game for how long now. And I think this tournament has set it apart in all different aspects, be it social media, be it the game, be it anything, and be it sponsorship. You're looking at solely from women's perspective, and I think it's been absolutely outstanding.
There is this kind of, this idea in a lot of unions that if they just take a carbon copy of what they do with the men and let's do that with the women, that it'll work. But England are proof positive that just doesn't work, that if you give women their own space to flourish, you let them define themselves in some ways, you let them structure their own top club competition, that it does flourish. And Chloe, they're attracting huge names from around the world. We see the likes of Beatrice Rigoni out of Kelter, Ilona Mara briefly, and Trailfinders have just signed Georgia Ponsonby and Alana Borland from the Black Ferns. So it's attracting huge numbers of people, Chloe, it's attracting a lot of our own, I suppose, as well, particularly a lot of our forwards who aren't involved in the sevens competition. It is the be-all and end-all club competition in the world.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're competing and you want to play international rugby, you need to be playing at a high level week in, week out, and that's what this league gives you. You're not going playing teams and winning 114-0. It's rare you see those kind of score lines. There's sprinkles of international players in every single club around the Prem 15. So you're getting high quality rugby in, week out, which can only make you a better player. Especially when you look at the semi-finals and finals, they're almost like internationals. When you have Harlequins playing Gloucester and Exeter playing Bristol, and Saracens are involved there as well. 5 really, really good teams that probably would beat most international sides. And that's the attraction to it. It's to make yourself a better rugby player. It's not to get filthy rich. I know there's a bit of money there that supports them, but it definitely isn't it's not the equivalent of the men's players going to Japan or anything like that. But
nothing close. No.
It's for the high quality rugby and to make yourself a better player that puts you in a better position to play internationally. And who wouldn't want to avail of that if you can, if your career allows you to, if your life allows you to. It's something that all young players will aspire to do.
Fiona, we had on a soaper on a few weeks ago who was talking about New Zealand rugby versus England rugby, and she's talking about how, in her opinion, New Zealand rugby is huge amount of talent and a kind of a small program backing that up, and that England are the reverse of that. They've got talent. She said a small amount, I'm quoting her, and then a massive program that is underpinning that. And I think certainly that massive program is definitely there. And you can see it in the rugby IQ of the players on the pitch and how they're problem solving as they go.
Not like New Zealander to be a bit cocky about rugby, is it?
No,
at all? No, that program is absolutely huge, and as I touched on Ailbhe earlier as well, it's the ability to be able to field those. Like Chloe has even spoken about there, all the different players from different countries making the league so competitive. But England itself, I suppose, can have 2-3 teams that would be competitive. So it just shows you the high quality of the league, that girls are just able to play together, but it's the amount they learn. And I've been over in New Zealand, I've seen the structures. I've played in Canada, played in Australia, but I never played in New Zealand. And I know, I suppose the women's side is getting a bit better, but I think over here we'd always feel like it was, New Zealand, it must have unbelievable structures. It must be this, it must be that, because the talent is so good that we see coming out in World Cup cycle. But I think where you can really tell, I suppose, the difference between England and New Zealand is that England can sustain that. So they haven't been beaten, but the last time, if they lost the World Cup final, it would have been the World Cup final previous would have been their last loss. So I feel like with New Zealand, when you watch them, they're kind of inconsistent at times. They mightn't look as fit. Obviously, when it comes to World Cup time, they're absolutely on the money. But to me, that shows that maybe for those couple of years pre or après World Cups, that the investment, the program, the structure isn't quite as good as it is leading up to them going on a world stage where everybody can see, and they reflect that. So with England, it's all year round, it's club level, it's consistent, and we know it because we can see it over here, and we see some of our own players. Now, I'd argue that you could get that in this country, obviously not to that high level, but you could get players to improve week in, week out playing the local leagues. But certainly when you look at the players that have left here, some of them within maybe 2-3 months, you can see the massive difference in physicality. And I suppose exactly like you said as well, the game IQ is huge because they have to. It's their job. They can review footage. They have so much more time in their hands.
I think for me, Dorothy Wall is the epitome of that player who was really, really good, a solid player for us. She goes over to Exeter Chief and she comes back a woman possessed, like a woman who has played the best rugby of her life. So unfortunate to see her get that injury coming to the World Cup, but she was so good. You touched on, whether we could build that here in Ireland or not. I've seen lots of people kind of online, saying, oh, we need to get some teams and just try and get teams into the PWR. I think that would be the worst thing that we could ever try because we would absolutely struggle. I think, the Celtic Challenge has some promise, but like you said, we need the Scottish to really take it seriously and invest. We need the Welsh to take it seriously and invest. Do you think, Fiona, that in Ireland we have a problem that maybe other nations don't, in that we're losing a lot of talent to other sports in terms of camogie, in terms of football? It's still the same kind of athlete pool, but there's more sports to divide them up amongst.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose with the game being the way it has been in the past and the negativity around it and stuff like that, you've probably lost a group of kids that, if they'd seen it, could have chosen that sport as their number one, but maybe instead have decided to go play Gaelic football or camogie or soccer even was big there on the back of, I suppose, them qualifying for the World Cup. So I think this World Cup cycle has probably been really good for the younger rugby generation that are coming up because they can see the team were excellent. The rugby was unbelievable. The whole tournament, how they went about it. You could see the RFU got behind them as well. But certainly, just touching on that Celtic Cup thing as well, right now, there's 2 teams, right, in the Celtic Cup. And we know we've looked at the scorelines last year. And it's not good enough competition before you go into, if you're winning 109-0 or whatever, that one against Edinburgh at the end, 106 maybe nil. I mean, how can you go into Six Nations and have been tested defensively other than playing each other was probably the biggest thing. And I know there's talk of some of the internationals coming back, but even on the 2 team side of things, if you look at that Irish squad that went over to the World Cup, if a lot of them play, right, if most of them play, and you have 34, 35, so you say 30 of those guys played, that's probably both teams, right? So that's what about the likes of the interpros, the girls, not Chloe because she's ancient now, so she's
She's gone.
She knows I'm only messing with her. But what about those girls that were really good at interpro time, especially up in the Leinster side of things? What about the sevens girls that now aren't on a circuit? How many of them are getting to develop at that 15s high performance environment? So by only having the 2 teams, I think it does it a disservice. If it went to 4 teams, that's a different state of affairs. If it went to the provincial things, but certainly I feel this year in particular, with those girls coming off the back of a World Cup, they're all on a high, very few injuries. You've got girls coming back. The talent pool underneath it, be it sevens, be it those that absolutely rocked it at inter-pro time, especially on the Wolfhound side, we'll say, side of things, how will they burst their way onto that scene? Because it's going to be very hard.
Yeah, it does feel like we're kind of between or in a moment of transition where we don't have the AIL at elite level anymore. It's kind of been drained for a lot of teams into the Celtic Challenge, and the Celtic Challenge just isn't serving the purpose it needs to just yet because our opposition isn't backing it in the way we have. So I think it's a difficult position we're in. Hopefully it's a program that we can go on to develop though, and hopefully it's that kind of development piece that we're in at the moment, and it will kind of flourish in the next few years. So we'll look a little bit at the England game, the big final, where of course England won, shock horror. Chloe, well, Canada got so much right last week and performed so well against the Black Ferns. Strategically, they seemed to absolutely nail it. This week, they struggled to handle the complete game that England offered, and they struggled with the physicality of England.
Yeah, to be fair, it was probably more of England's strengths than kind of Canada's shortfallings. As you said, it was very much a complete game. And I think one thing we saw is how comfortable England are defending. Like they were just happy to defend for 60% of the game. It doesn't bother them. They're so comfortable in their system and they're so physical that they're not worried. They're not conceding ground. And Canada kind of didn't know what to do, bar a couple of tries that they did get. But England just like their whole game was super, they in broken play, like Canada are in the game, they're up a try and they kind of have a silly kick that, really needed to make touch. And then they have the penalty advantage and then Ellie Kildunne just steps two people and absolutely scores a worldie. That was probably a killer for Canada. They probably needed to score again. And then England's bench probably brought a lot more than Canada had. You're bringing like Sarah Bern was the best tight head prop in the country for a very long time. She got injured. Maud Muir came in and then she played second fiddle for the last year or so. She comes on and just annihilates the scrum, herself, Lark Atkin-Davis, who probably as well was, would start in any other international side. They come in, blow the scrum apart. And at that stage, Canada just didn't really have any answers for what England had to offer. And the thing is, they were there, they had the exact same amount of entries into the 22 that England had. England just capitalised on theirs and were much more clinical. But that, I suppose we spoke last week about Canada and that one person carry with one person barrel and then just that quick pick and the ruck speed being so effective. England's physicality in the tackle didn't allow them to do that, and their post-tackle effort was so strong that Canada had to kind of put more bodies in the ruck than they really liked to. And then England were just able to soak up all that pressure. And then shock horror, Hannah Botterman gets another ruck turnover like she did. She also got a yellow card to go with it. But, she did get one or two turnovers as well. But yeah, it was probably, the best team in the tournament probably did win. I think we all lived in hope that Canada would pull it out of the bag. Possibly. I know we're saying it kind of shows that investment, brings results, but I don't know, there's something in the back of my mind that wanted Canada to win just because. But yeah, England were super, in fairness. The work rate was phenomenal. They had 3 people up in the 20s in tackles, Kabea, Tallinn and Zoe Allcroft as well. So they're just they were phenomenal, to be fair. Canada were still good, it wasn't like they were really poor. But I think England just had that kind of 5th and 6th gear to go into.
Yeah, spot on.
I think it's funny when you talked about, England being so happy to defend. For me, it seems to be a pattern, particularly in women's rugby, that the teams that are happy for the other side to have the ball and they'll just soak up that pressure and they'll let them exhaust themselves. These are the teams that seem to do better. And England are the epitome of that, Fiona. They're so happy to just play off the ball. They read the game very well and they make teams suffer when they attack them.
Yeah, 100%. If you look at the attacking stats from that game in particular, I mean, Canada were so attacking minded. I think they had meters round at 487, England 378. You look at the passes, Canada passed over 100 more than 209, I think, to 109. Runs 175 to 90. So just in general, how Canada attacked. I suppose what was different, I felt, from the previous game that England played against France was they, exactly like you said, they let them have the ball. They were happy in how they defended their mauls. They actually had only 50% in their mauls, which was something England would pride themselves on, whereas Canada had 6 out of 6. But where they are absolutely outstanding and lethal is, and the same as New Zealand, is that counter-attack. And Chloe spoke about Ellie Kildunne, and how Canada will probably be annoyed is that they had actually defended teams really well in the counter-attack throughout the tournament. But for some reason, and I said this to someone before the game, I said, look, if you look at the stats from the tournament, just from the tournament, Canada are probably statistically favoured to win on how they've been playing and how they've been, how ruck speed, everything. But for some reason, and Chloe will probably agree with me, for the last 4 years since the last World Cup, anytime Canada, and I've watched the games, the friendlies, anytime Canada have played against England, they just don't seem to be able to lift it to the level that they can in other games. And I feel like there could be something psychological there with them as well, because they're so good. And it's not that they weren't excellent in the final, but for their standards defensively, I think they'll be very, very annoyed. And England, you give them a sniff like that, and in a World Cup final, 82,000 fans, it was just not going to ever change after that first half, I felt.
Chloe, we've talked a lot over the last few weeks about how important the set piece is in terms of building into the game and giving teams a platform. I think England kind of, were the perfect example of that. A lot of their scrums were very, very dominant. Their lineouts were particularly solid as well.
Yeah, what was unusual was actually the one they overthrew that Canada ended up scoring off. Like that was like, at that stage you're like, okay, is this actually it? Because it's so unlike them to overthrow that. And it was kind of that kind of tail ball against France where they mauled it over from 22 meters. It kind of seemed like that was what was going to happen. And then, they overthrow it and Canada end up scoring, and really, really unlike England, but they kind of got it together after that. And their dominance is just telling, their scrummaging percentages, their ability to bring off 3 world-class front rows and bring on 3 more. Like, it must be heartbreaking to be sitting there and then see, oh, sweet Lord, look who's coming up. But that was probably a turning point in the match. Canada had that scrum parked in the 22. It was their ball, 65 minutes, and England blow them out of the water. There's only 13 points in it at that point. If Canada, were able to get possession there, get a score, it brings it down to a 1-score game. And then 3 minutes after, another scrum, England this time, and another penalty. And that, for me, was kind of where the game was done and dusted, because they had such superiority in that set piece that they just made it count when they needed it to. I know they got pinged for one, like, obstructing try off the Maud Muir in front of the jumper.
Yeah.
They just backed themselves then, and 3 or 4 minutes later they do the exact same thing. Amy Cocaine goes over. It's just such a well-oiled machine. And it's tough to live with. Like, if you compete in the air, you lose bodies on the ground. If you don't compete in the air, you're giving them that tail ball, which is what they generally like to maul off. It's really hard to defend, and it's hard to know what's the right thing to do. But their set piece wins games. We say it all the time, and if it doesn't win you the game, it gives you a fairly good chance at it.
Yeah. And like you said, on the few occasions that it did creak, they got their first try off a poor England set piece. Anytime the England set piece seemed to creak, Canada seemed to get back into the game a little bit. They seemed to at least profit territorially a little bit. So it very much seems that the entire control of the momentum of the game is down to what England do or what they don't do, rather than what the opposition do. They're very much kind of controlling the rhythm of the game. We touched earlier on that ruck speed, Chloe, about how they have been the fastest ruck speed all competition, and just in the final it just didn't happen. Fiona, Chloe mentioned that it was a lot of work in the tackle and kind of post tackle. They seemed to do really, really well to slow down that tackle, to give everybody a chance to set in terms of their defence, and to just disrupt the flow of that Canada wanted and that ruck speed.
Yeah, look, and let's call a spade a spade. A different referee might see that differently as well, and it can be ref differently. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It is the referee's interpretation, and I certainly thought that was going to be something England would focus on. I mean, any good coach would see that to stop their quick attack, you've got to slow down their ball. But for some reason, they weren't able to, I suppose, change that. And you have to just give England credit. You have to say how they went about that. They gave away a couple of penalties. There was a few incidents, but in general, they got away with it. And if when you're in that big area, you're ref in the World Cup final, I think it is very, very hard in front of 82,000 people to blow that slow down ruck ball. It's something, as I said, it's interpretation. So I think it is something that probably England, to the exact second, got right what they could get away with. And that is an art in itself. That is a skill in itself. And they certainly were able to do that. In saying that, I think it frustrated Canada then. And then Canada started probably making more errors than we would normally see, especially when they were going out the back. The defence then was able to get up a little bit quicker than they had been in their face. So I just thought it was really, be it some people hate that side of the game, I think it was a masterclass in how to target an area that everybody else is saying is brilliant, by being on the borderline of the laws and get away with it. And essentially it stood up because it was that counter-attack ball then that did turn over where England done a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. They were perfectly borderline. You know, if we were doing that, I'd be like, yeah, fine, ignore it. Let's play on. I wouldn't be questioning that. Play against them, you might be looking at it a little bit differently. But, you know, there are teams that we've seen over the past few years, you know, New Zealand men's team 10 years ago, who just lived offside permanently. They lived on the far side of the ruck, just having a scratch and a thing. You know, they were never in the right position. England just did it to, you know, absolutely perfectly. Chloe, I think of all teams, the English team is so dominated by a really, really good pack. We've mentioned how, you know, they take off a world-class front row, they put on another world-class front row. But you touched earlier on those back row players and the amount of tackles that they put in and how dominant they were. You know, it's from 1 to 8 in that pack, and bench coming off as well. They are absolutely incredible and so physical.
Yeah, they are, to be fair. And like, you look at Sadia Kabea, got player of the match. She had 23 tackles. She'd over 100 tackles in the tournament. Marina Tallene, who in fairness, like, has probably come in under the radar quite a bit in terms of, you know, the Prem and Six Nations didn't play a lot. And, you know, I think everyone thought it would be, you know, Rosie Galligan and Abby Warden there. Maybe Allcroft would move into the row and they'd bring in another back row, Fiona maybe. But she just cemented her place in there. And it came from pure work rate. But they just, like, you know, you bring on Fiona, you bring on Bern, you bring on Rosie Galligan, Marley Packer sitting in the stand, like, you know, she's, as much as I suppose she's one of them players we all love to hate. Because
saying nothing.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But let's be honest, she's a good operator still, like, and you know, she's probably sitting there saying, I was captain in the last World Cup, you know, I captained 2 years ago, and now I'm sitting in the stand. It just shows the golfing class that they have, but they're just so physical. They're so fit. Their ability to make tackles, get up, hit rocks, then like that, have the ability to counter attack. Like, for one of the tries, there was one of the phases of play, like they turned over a line out, and Amy Cockayne throws a 30-meter pass from from the base of the line out, from the 15-meter line. It lands in the midfield to Tatiana Hurd. Like, that's unbelievable from a hooker. That's some skill set, like, you know. So they're not just physically very good. They're also, their skill set is really high as well. So it just, that's the difference that we had in the two teams. Not to say Canada weren't skillful, they were. I think England just showed their moments of skill, like, a lot more in the game.
I want to throw out a question out now, actually. A couple of 50-22s aside in this game, actually, it never felt like kicking was going to decide the result of this game. And actually, that's been the case for a number of the games throughout the World Cup. I kind of struggle to think of a game where it was the kicking made the difference. But it felt like that was a key point that was put in place beforehand, was look out for the kicking throughout the tournament. Do you think that that's an artifact from the men's game that has just kind of doesn't really apply to this tournament, or do you think we're actually seeing a trend in the way the game is going to move forward from this?
I'll jump on just from my perspective. This is the most kicking I've ever seen in the World Cup. So in general, women don't tend to kick. It's grown, and the talent of kickers coming through this country alone is unbelievable to watch. You're seeing a growth in it. They obviously have it in England longer. They've invested a lot of time in kicking and coaching kicking, but certainly I think that's why people love the game, Cian, that the women's game as well, is that the attack is like, in general, there is a few kicks, but what you see is pure and honest skill set hands rugby. And I think that's what adds to the women's game. And it is moving, obviously, towards a more tactical side, but I can't imagine it ever going to the stage where it's Johan Van Grant style and we're all sitting there. we're all sitting watching it over and back.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Some people would argue Bath won the league.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's delighted.
Yeah,
it's true.
But to be fair, they didn't, like, I watched a few back games. He obviously felt they had a different player pool because it wasn't as kicky as
Well,
I
they
suppose.
also had Finn Russell, who doesn't do what he's told at all. So, maybe that is the game plan, and he just chooses not to follow it.
Now, in saying that, I did enjoy some of the games where you'd see, like a few little dinks over the top, or the people spotting people out in the backfield. So it's kind of territory. We're seeing a lot more of it, but I don't think it'll ever get to the level that we'd see in I suppose the men's game. Just not because the kicking talent isn't there. It's just far more exciting to watch, and I suppose, like, there's another side. Chloe might agree or disagree. The men's game is so physical, so hard hitting, like the women's game is as well. But sometimes you're just kicking the ball away because they don't even want to. They're after taking about 10 hits in a row. Whereas, yes, the women's game is physical, but I just feel like sometimes when I'm watching it, there's more space, there's more attack. It just looks that way to me. So I think people don't want to kick the ball away. They want to hold on to it because they can see stuff in front of them.
And what about if you catch it off a kickoff phase and there's space and you're a prop? Should you then kick the ball?
Absolutely. I'm having a sup of wine for that one. Of course you should.
Everyone loves a funt. It is the best kind of kick.
It is absolute work of art. I have to say, I watched the Munster game, at the end of the Munster game, second half, after watching the final on Saturday, and I felt like I was a little bit confused. It's like when you go from watching one sport to watching another, you go, no, that's not a knock on. You can do that in GA or whatever. I felt confused watching the men's game because I was like, this isn't how to play rugby. I've watched so much women's game over the last while that I've just adapted to how women play and how they do it, and it's so different to the men's that I found it somewhat boring. I'm not gonna lie. It was just like people running into brick walls. It's like, yeah, but come on, where's the fun? Where's throwing the ball out wide? Come on.
Some of us are watching the Leinster game. That's really how you don't play rugby.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention it, Cian, on your birthday, but yeah,
That's
nilled.
all right. Yeah,
Nilled.
Look, it is what it is. Sure, last time Leinster were nilled, they went on to win a European title.
That was Munster 2008.
It was, yeah, 2008.
2008.
Against Munster, yeah.
I'll be honest, I take it.
Well, slow start, but I take a slow start to get there at the end.
Of course. It's one game.
We'll see what happens. So just before we finish up talking about the final, one point that I found really, really interesting in that game, and Chloe, we talked about it on the day, was Honey Davidson making a decision to go to the TMO because Aldcraft was adamant, and her player was adamant, that the ball was put down, that was a try. And Honey Davidson goes, right, we'll check it, goes to the TMO, we spend a bit of time looking at it. Nope, ball never crossed the line, and it's back to their penalty. You made a really, really good point that, if that's the case, should be a penalty, turn around the penalty and get going. There should be some sort of inherent risk to trying to force the ref to go to the TMO. And it's a risk that we'd like to have, I suppose, at times. Okay. Like when Aoife Wafer gets bitten.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm going to jump in before anyone answers. You have to understand the pressure from the bite where it wasn't looked at. So that they were obviously told, go, so that's, I agree with what you're saying, but I'd imagine she was just like, yeah, okay, we're going to look at everything. I'm not going to get caught like last time,
Yeah.
So you're saying they were once bitten, twice shy?
That's it. On the money.
Dad jokes, dad jokes.
I know, I
Except
just
for a day, I'm allowed. I don't care. I'm allowed.
You see a lot in the men's game, like the respect side of it, where people, like the players, just say to the ref, I knocked it on, don't check it. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's the difference in the arrogance of, I've definitely scored that and you didn't. Now, look, I'm sure like there's times when I'm the same, I'm like, no, definitely. And you think like but in a World Cup final when it's gone to TMO and it's going to be put on the big screen and you're going to,
Yeah.
I was also probably just being bitter saying that it should be a penalty. That was me sitting in a clubhouse and like, oh, for God's sake, it should be a penalty.
It would be a nice balance though, wouldn't it? Like, you know, it would be that nice balance that the other team gets the ball. If you've put pressure on the ref and you've wasted that time.
Well, you could do two. You know the way, what is it where they get two calls? And
there you go, that's the flag on the field.
We're against the captain referred here.
What is it? It's American football, isn't it? Where you get like two calls on the ref. So you've two calls. So so you don't so that gives you two chances if you think the TMO has missed it. But you'll always save one then obviously till the end, so you have to be a bit. So
that was the problem.
Tactical use of them and stuff.
Do you remember the Rainbow Cup? It went. Oh, sure, it was a disaster.
It was a disaster timing wise.
Here's a question for you now: if it was South Africa saying we've definitely scored a try, would the ref be going to the TMO to look at it?
Doubtful.
I know,
very
but like
doubtful.
They're controversial in themselves, like so.
You know what I mean? Like tier 1, tier 2, a little bit.
Like the women's, like
Oh, sorry, I thought you were on about the men's team. I was
no.
I was
I
talking
thought you
like,
referred to the men's team. I was like, okay, they're hardly tier 2.
We gave them a solid 30 seconds in this episode now. No more of the men's stuff.
No. I was talking about the women's game there.
Right, so we'll touch briefly then on the bronze final. It was before the final. It was France against New Zealand. I feel like, Chloe, it was a bit of, again, an unsurprising result. It was a game where there's two teams who love to play loose, flowing rugby, less of the structured stuff. And when they had the freedom to play, the better team came out on top, really.
Yeah, to be fair, it was actually a good game to watch, considering, I know, like, it's a huge pride in playing for a bronze medal. Like, I know it's probably really hard to kind of get mentally and psychologically up for that after the disappointment of a semi-final, but you wouldn't have known. It was a really competitive game. And yeah, I think New Zealand just went back to what they were good at, like, especially in that first half. They got Pearse Woodman into the game at every opportunity they could. They played to their strengths. France, again, were kind of similar. They spent a lot of time in the New Zealand 22 in that first half and then going at half time, like 19 points down. Like New Zealand, just the ability to score back-to-back tries. Those 3 tries they scored before half time, they probably just epitomised what the Black Ferns do. It was top class, like some of them, like props throwing Sonny Bills out the back. Second rows catching it on their toes and passing it out, and then Brunt going over, and then Sorensen McGee's was just a piece of an unbelievable piece of individual skill, and it kind of came off the back of Georgia Miller doing something incredible. Yeah. And then I think McGee said, "Oh Jesus, I better get going here. She's going to take that award off me."
Yeah.
So she decided to make her own try. But to be fair, Georgia Miller ran the dummy switch with her for her to go on the outside of the player, but she finished it really well, and her second finish was top quality as well. That's the kind of thing you kind of see in Super Rugby. You don't see that too often up this side, is that kind of dive, one-handed score in the corner. It was an incredible finish, but France were still good. Like, Bordan Sansu, she really stood up. Like, everything good that came through France came through her. Scored a try. She was probably unlucky not to get another one. Rakau Fall threw her kind of a suicide pass out in front of her that she really had to reach to get. If that went directly to hand, I don't know, would poor Elaine have caught her? And then another one as well with Grise going up the wing in the second half. I just thought she had to give that ball earlier to Sansus for her, and she'd have ran it in. And then they end up knocking it on. But it was a really good competitive game. New Zealand showing their worth, like took a couple of penalties each time just to keep pushing that scoreboard out. Played real knockout rugby. I know they ended up winning by a good bit, but it was a really good game. And yeah, better team won in the day. Portia Woodman now probably retired, as they said, passing it again to Sarson McGee. Again, she's probably really retired this time.
Yeah.
But, Sarson McGee finished with 11 tries, top try scorer, last person to do that was Portia. So, they still have like a lot of young players coming through, and It was a really exciting game to kind of tee up a good final.
Yeah, Saracen McGee is just a clear talent. It does feel like this kind of passing of a baton from, the goat of women's rugby. I only found out literally this week that Pearse wouldn't started playing rugby in 2012. In my mind, she started playing when she was probably in the womb. Like, she's so talented. She's an incredible talent. But Saracen McGee, 18 years of age, 19 years of age, a real talent. So I just want to look at the Rugby World Cup, and I suppose where women's rugby has come from and where it's going to over the next few years. If you look back at the last 3 World Cups, in 2017 we had a home World Cup here, and it was very different looking to what this World Cup was. In around 44,000 tickets sold across 2 venues, UCD and then up to Ravenhill. It was a great competition. The atmosphere was incredible. All the players are really accessible. But we've gone from there, 44,000, which felt like a big World Cup, to 2022, 140,000 tickets sold, to 2025, 440,000 tickets sold. Just incredible in terms of, Fiona, the journey we're on and how quickly we're getting there in terms of the growth of the game.
Yeah, spot on. But like, you have to take your hat off as well. Like, you're talking about the figures. I just think the players and how the teams that qualified, how they all conducted themselves in the lead up to the World Cup as well has been absolutely unbelievable. Be it through social media, be it through interviews. They've been putting out the buzz. You can see kids, who her name has escaped me now, but the South African number 8, what's her name?
Hele.
Hele, yeah.
Sorry, Hele. Like, just seeing Hele talk about the boy coming in asking for her jersey. Like a little kid, he saw her obviously at the World Cup in the first or the previous New Zealand game. She'd an outstanding one as well in the warm up, but it would have only been around then that he saw her, and he just loved that battering. So Ram and just their interaction and everything about that was unbelievable. But certainly, I think the standard of rugby through investment has gotten so high. It's enjoyable to watch, and that's what people have realised. We've been saying it for how long now as players, that if you look at the game as a separate to the men's game, we're not saying we don't want all this, I'm going to curse, bullshit about it's so more physical or it's so more. No one has ever in their life played women's rugby and said we can hit as hard as the men's or we can do that. It's a different game. We can play the exact same game and be physical and everything about it. But what's the realization has certainly seeped in. And I think it's been in the last, on this side in particular, watching the likes of, or France and England, I suppose. But I think in this country, watching the growth of the girls from rock bottom and be able to go to that WXV, be able to qualify for the World Cup as well, and then go on and what they did in the World Cup. Yes, they'll be disappointed, but how they played, how they brought people from Ireland to view the game on RTE, to view the game on BBC. It's just added more and more fans. And I think this competition being held in England was exactly what was needed. It was so accessible. They absolutely blew it out of the water in how they went about their business, advertising it and everything they've done attached to it, World Rugby in particular. So look, I feel like it's on a upward trajectory, and we, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France even, I'm disappointed, to be honest with you, how France are playing. I think they have it in them to get better than what they are. They need to jump on this now and thoroughly invest in the game, and sponsorships will just start rolling in. We've seen it in women's soccer. We've seen it in America in particular. If you put your money in now, it's probably a tiny bit of money, and it will reap rewards as the game grows and grows.
I've been saying for years, that Field of Dreams movie, build it and it will come.
Yeah.
And it's so true. We've been crying out for years for investment in the women's game, and marketing research has shown over the last 5 years that the best bang for your buck is investing in women's sport. Whatever the women's sport it is, invest in women's sport, because you put in a little bit of money and you get a whole load back for it. And it's it is such a quality game. And, you touched on how, we don't play the game the same as the men, and we don't have to play the game the same as the men, be it on or off the pitch. We're defining it in, a way that suits us, be it, advertising through social media, feck the normal media, if they don't back us. I was looking at a site, which I shall not name, that does a lot of writing about sport, and August 24th was the last time they wrote about the women's rugby. And I was just thinking, this is desperate. This is absolutely desperate. That's traditional media. Social media is absolutely winning out and driving the game. The players are doing that. And then on the pitch, like we've touched on earlier, it is a different game played by people with different bodies, and different skill sets come to the fore because of that. When you look at women's sport, I know we were talking, or they were talking a lot in media about soccer over the last year, and the Premiership over in the UK. There was some stats that came out that women's bodies are typically 20% less strong, 20% smaller. The pitch is the same size, the ball is the same size, the rules are the same, the goals are the same size. We are playing a game that is not designed for us, but we're redefining it for ourselves. Chloe, do you think that kind of new identity coming into the game and how women are really kind of taking control of the narrative is important for the women's growth going forward?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is the players actually have just taken ownership themselves of it. Like TikTok has, like, it's probably the fastest growing app in the world, and between Alona Maher and obviously Eve Higgins and the Red Roses and all that, like the Black Ferns, they're all using it, and that's how this promotion kind of happens off the field. But then you have to stand up and, talk the talk on the field if you're going to do all that, I think. And that's what they've done. And it is exciting and it is different. And we've spoken about the differences in kicking, but there is similarities then, how strong a set piece is. Like, having a really good set piece is the same in the men's and the women's game. So, while we speak about phase play maybe being different and like tactically kicking less might be different, it doesn't mean like that the games are worlds apart, but they're also allowed to be similar and dissimilar, and both can be true. But I do think like showing their personalities, that has been probably the biggest attraction to it. Like look at the amount of cowboy hats that were in Twickenham the weekend. And that all comes from like Ellie Kildunne, Jess Breach, Meg Jones, just absolutely letting their personality shine. I'm sure now if you're standing under the post and they're yee-hawing and all that, you're fit to throw your boots at them, like, because that's what I'd be livid now if someone did that. But look, it's attracting people to the game, and it is what it is, it's how they're expressing themselves. And then they do have the walk to back it up, So I think it's definitely something that's going to have to grow. I do think that accessibility piece for the game, that World Cup being in England, was a big driver of numbers. It was such an easy place to get to. I know obviously it's easy for me to say, not if you're from New Zealand, but just geographically, it probably was a very good place at a very good time.
Yeah. And it feels like the last few World Cups were like that. They were what was needed at the right time, and England just nailed it.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a tournament. Kind of an order of magnitude in 2 cycles is insane, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly. But you know what? I want to find out what you guys all enjoyed about it the most. So I'll go to you first, Chloe. What was your highlight and your low light of the tournament?
The drinking in the 2 weekends was my highlight. And
the day after each of the drinking sessions.
It has to be the hangovers. They had to be 2 of the worst hangovers I had. I know the highlight was definitely walking up to the stadium in Brighton for that New Zealand game. That was just incredible. Like even though they lost, like it was one of the best occasions I've ever been at. It was phenomenal. Like it was just the support, the camaraderie, like the connection with the Irish crowd. It was such a brilliant occasion. I loved every minute of it, and the amount of people that went and just meeting everyone from different teams afterwards, and the night before and everything. It was such good crack, but it was a real special moment, I think, in the stadium in Brighton, just at kickoff and throughout the game. And the hangovers, I'm going to leave those as the low light. That Sunday in Exeter.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. That Sunday in Exeter, that was rough, let me tell you.
Me.
Fiona, for you, the highlight and the low light of the tournament.
Oh gosh. Okay, highlight, I suppose, from an Irish perspective was the very first game against Japan and being in that stadium, and I actually kind of cried a little bit to myself just after the game when Japan went around. Now, it probably had about 3 points in me as well, but still, when Japan went around and just bowed down and everybody stayed, and just it was, and the Irish girls were going around, and to look, that would, like, obviously the start was amazing, the win was amazing, but it was that moment I kind of felt this game has grown so much. This is unbelievable, as no one has left the stadium. And they were just going around, and it was just something unbelievable. Like, it was so cool. And I suppose I'll say the hangover. Actually, the bloody, what was the last match against France? I had to get home through Cardiff the next morning.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was going
dear.
over with off the ball, and there was no flights, and I had to get back for coach, and they were like, oh, you can go late Monday. I was like, I have to coach. So the only possible way to get home was through Cardiff, and I will never in my life forget waking up that morning and trying to get to Cardiff.
Oh, my God. That's making my skin
That's
crawl.
like hell on earth, yeah.
I mean,
was hell on earth.
There's no need for that sort of thing now. I think that we might have to put this out after the watershed now after that. Ailbhe, give us your high and low. Start with the low, we'll end on a high, please.
Okay, my low would have been seeing that Chloe is actually only barely mediocre at pool, but it's okay. Her wife made up for it.
Also, I'd been drinking for about 9 hours solid. I couldn't even see the table, I'd say.
And then I was feeding you with more.
Yeah, it was a perfect plan devised by you.
No, low light would probably have been end of the quarterfinal, seeing the Irish girls all in a huddle, and then they come round to do an applause of the fans in the stadium, and just seeing their faces in floods of tears, and all I could think of was, so proud of you, like absolutely desperately proud. And I know there was such bitter disappointment for them, but I just couldn't see anything but a positive group of women. I cried too, though. Highlight, there's probably a few highlights. One of them is feeding Chloe with pints. She's on the bottle, so in fairness to her. Then I have to say the best part of the whole thing for me was in Brighton, going from the stadium back into the middle of Brighton and being on the train and being absolutely wedged between every sweaty person ever, and just having the crack. The sing-song was unreal. Like Nicole Cronin here,
Amazing.
I had Briggsy here, and the London was just giving it absolute socks. It was brilliant. And it reminded me of the 2023 World Cup in France, when the Irish just took over on the tram in Nantes. It was the same, but even better, because it was the women's game.
Amazing. I have to say, my low light is I'm gutted that I missed out on it. My highlight is it was such an amazing tournament. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. And we're kind of running out of time, but not so much that we're not going to do the lucky dip. So
I just saw Chloe go, oh, Christ.
I know, like.
the thing is, we all know what's going on. So we'll start with Fiona this time. Fiona, pick a number between 1 and 15 there, and we'll do a random question off of the sheet of pain here.
Okay. I'll go with 13.
13. Let's see if you regret changing your mind. No, probably not. This is a softball. If the squad had to run a cafe for a day, who's on the coffee machine, who's working the floor, and who's absolutely banned from the till?
Which squad am I talking about?
He has so many.
You've got mine to pick from.
Yeah, pick one. Pick one.
Pick your favourite, no pressure.
Or your
I
least
go with
favourite.
Buzz last year because I still haven't got to know
You don't
everyone
know
at
the
Belfast
names
yet.
of the other girls, is it?
I do. So what was the first question?
So who's on the coffee machine, who's working the floor, and who's absolutely banned from the till? I mean, realistically, all people want to know is the last one.
Okay, who's banned from the till? Who's I'd have to say we probably wouldn't let Alana anywhere near the till, would we?
Hannah actually is the smartest on the team. She's just, it's just that kind of common sense, really. But like in terms of everything else, like.
Well, I'm just talking about maybe just she'd be doing too much talking. We'd never make any money.
Oh, there you go.
I
Yeah,
thought
it's
she
no
was
good having
dipping
someone on the
into it.
till. It's
I thought she
queue
was
out the
dipping into
door.
the till.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
She'd chat to
jeez.
everyone.
Yeah, no.
Do you know who's 100% working the floor? Eilbhe Cahill. I
Yeah.
saw her talking absolute bullshit to any stranger that would come up to her. She was making up lies left, right, and centre, and they were lapping it up. But they were looking at me, kind of going, "Is this true?" And I just nodded away. Yeah.
Definitely.
That
Did you
woman
not
is
hear
the
what
gift
she
of the
did about
gab.
the New Zealand jersey? Sorry, Hayes, I'm cutting into your question, but about Eilbhe. So she was wearing a New Zealand jersey and she got ate in the pub by some woman about how she's wearing a New Zealand jersey and they knocked us out of the World Cup and she's Irish. And she said she'd no other option but to say, my dad's from New Zealand. And just straight up lie about it because she just said it was the only option.
And she can do it like it's nothing
She can
to
pull
her.
it all off. Yeah, no
Yeah,
matter.
She does it all. She does it all.
Some woman.
Oh, I love her.
Right, Chloe, take that mute off. Pick a number between 1 and 15. 13 is gone. The softball, single softball only in each time.
Oh, yeah, that's convenient. That's convenient.
You wanted somebody else to go
I'm gonna
first.
pick 13.
I'm gonna make this question for Hayes. So I'm gonna pick number 1. I'm gonna pick number 1.
Oh, okay.
I'm manifesting
Okay,
this
number-
now that I can throw her under a bus.
Number 1.
Go
What's
on.
the weirdest way you've ever been recognised as a rugby player or had someone connect the dots about who you are?
That's a tough one.
I just don't know. Like,
Is when you were
You
dragged onto
surely
a
have
podcast.
something.
like I don't really like. No one's like, oh my god, there's whatever. Like that doesn't happen. To be honest, like if I'm really honest, like, I'm not as famous as the rest of them. That honestly doesn't really happen. Me, not gonna like you, and I never really.
She's lying. Just
recognise.
everyone's afraid to go up to her. They'd be afraid she'll
Probably,
fucking.
yeah, probably, yeah. Honestly,
Fiona-
Cian, I can't.
You can't-
Fiona, you must get it all the time. You're the one on the telly now.
I do that. Never. Oh, it's only when I talk and then people go, "Oh my god, your voice is so annoying on the radio." That's what I get.
Yeah,
Don't be
I've yet
slapped.
to go. I've yet ever had to have someone come up to me and go, "Oh, you're the guy off that podcast." So we all have our
yet.
crosses to bear.
Thank
Not
God.
yet.
Yeah, I know.
Soon,
I don't know
soon.
how I deal with that in
Disappoint
real
you,
life.
Right, well, that's been the lucky dip, and that pretty much wraps up season 2 of Mother Rucker.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible Rugby World Cup. It's been an absolute pleasure to cover it and do our best job. Fiona, thank you so much for taking time out of your frankly stupidly busy schedule. Fair play to you for jumping on. And Chloe Pearse, you're just a gift that keeps on giving. You've been absolutely stellar, showing up all the time, incredible analysis, endless knowledge of the finer points of the game, and so many eye-opening insights. But like I said, mediocre pull. For now, Mother Rucker will take a much-deserved break. Cian can hopefully sleep a little bit and rest up. And I can annoy him by plotting bigger and better things for next season. So make sure you follow and subscribe to find out what we're going to get up to next. Until then, keep on rucking.